Hey guys, it's George here at Life's Beacon with the founder Bob Allen and his faithful companion Rusty, my baby girl. She's a sweetheart. He said she might bark. I said I hope she does. I hope she gets involved in the conversation. So just a little information there. So I think I came to meet Bob probably about 7.5 years ago. Was introduced to him by Preacher Jim. You know, he's one of my best friends from Freedom Biker Church, and started coming over and kind of hanging out with the Beacon. Coming over here for men's cigar meetings that are every other Saturday. Coming over here when they put feeds on and they put benefits and stuff on, and guys would come over to the church. Had quite a few brothers that have come through here. Three of the guys that I sponsor have actually come through here and are doing absolutely awesome. Then unfortunately I've had some brothers that have come through here, and just like when they stop using their support system and stop doing what got them clean and what kept them doing what they were supposed to be doing, they end up going back to prison, or they end up overdosing, unfortunately. I've been through all that with Bob, and I gotta tell you, the number one thing, and he's a humble guy, right? And so I want to make him blush and make him feel funny. But the number one thing that I like about Bob is he'll call bullshit really quick. But my favorite thing about that is he'll let you finish. He'll let you say all the stuff you want to do, and what you'll probably hear him say. He'll let you sit there and say all the I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And so he says, okay, Rusty. So he lets you get through that, and then he goes, you're full of shit. You're still full of shit. Guys bounce out of here that get in trouble. Bob goes to court with them. The judges know him, the DAs know him, everybody in the recovery community around York, PA knows him. And so he's quite a character. He cracks me up. He looks like El Duce from the Boondock Saints. And so I just want to sit down and talk with him. I'm going to ask him some questions. So this is not canned. He has no idea what I'm going to ask him, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. So I think the first thing I want to ask you, Bob, is I've heard you talk about your dad so many times, and it seems to me, much like I had a very close relationship with my dad, that a lot of what you use with these guys that you work with came from your dad. Tell me a little bit about your dad. Tell me a little about your relationship before you went to prison and how your world was kind of before that.
Well, my dad was a good, kind man. I got all my qualities, my good qualities from him. Good heart. He was old school. Good hard work ethic. Play hard, work hard, play hard. After I got into high school and he started to have to come get me out of trouble, he would pull me aside and say, "Look, I don't care about what you told them or what's going on. You tell me exactly what's going on, because I need to know the truth every time." And that's the way he was. I got 3 spankings from him as a kid. First 2, I think he took it easy on me, and he saw that wasn't going to be effective. The third one, an ass whooping, was pretty rough. And I said to myself, I'm never getting another one of them. And from then on, when my mom said, "Now I'm going to tell your dad," "Yes, Mom. What do you want me to do?" He was about what he said he's about. He always followed through. He worked hard. He ran his own businesses. He's always worked for himself. I kind of got that from him. I always ran my own businesses, worked for myself, helping people out. I used to watch him over here in the parking lot when I had the tire company here. This guy would be running a story on him, and I'd be going, I know Dad's going to give him $100. And then Dad would come up to me and say, "Yeah, there's guy's family up in New York. He's got to get a bus to get up to New York, so he needs around $100." I said, "You give it to him?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "He's not going to New York. He's going to go use or do something." He goes, "That's his business." He goes, "My dad was a quiet faith guy." He said that the one thing I learned from the Bible was that you never know when you're meeting Jesus.
Amen.
And so he would always treat, it doesn't matter what their situation was, which I got that from him. When I started doing the Beacon, I had to acquire that thing that he had taught me, to give understanding, to give grace, to be humble, but don't let anybody walk on you. And that's what Jesus did. Jesus didn't let anybody walk on him, but he didn't. He didn't take any crap from him, but he gave them all understanding. And that's kind of what I got from my dad. My dad was always. He came and visited me. I did 9.5 years upstate state prison. He came every week for 9 years. Didn't miss a week. And before, my dad wasn't a real affectionate guy. He didn't give hugs, and he didn't even tell you he loved you too often. But he showed you. He worked hard. He provided family. Always had, when I turned 16, he helped me get a car. When I got out of prison, the first time the whole family got together up in Harrisburg, because I wasn't allowed in York, PA when I first got, in York County. We came up there, and when we were done at dinner all that, he got me, came over, he gave me a hug, and all my brothers and sisters looked like. And how come you got a hug? I said, we've been hugging for years now. Every time we left the prison, he'd give me a hug. And so my dad and I were close like that. He helped me start the Beacon. I actually started while I was in prison, and he used to play me because you can't run a business from prison. But he would come up and tell me the problems. Every week he'd come up and say, hey, this is what's going on, And then next week I was supposed to give him what I wanted him to do. And every week I'd say, okay, here's what we're going to do with these problems. He goes, oh, we already solved them. He says, you can't wait a week to solve problems. He says, I just do that so you know what's going on. So
not to cut you off, but I think probably you and your dad always had somewhere, even if you didn't realize it, the idea of the Beacon in your heart. What was the moment or the minute that the Beacon became at least a thing in your mind?
Well, on upstate, I was, after I had gotten settled down from taking the life of another person and got some of my dignity back, because I lost my human dignity when that happened. Lost everything. Lost my business, lost my house, lost everything. I was a professional motorcycle hill climber. Everything just went away. And I was struggling with, when I got out, if I was going to go back in the tire business, or I had 5 years clean and sober when I had taken that person's life, so I had a lot of recovery experience. Although I hadn't done any internal changing, I was all external. I could teach it. I was sponsoring people. I tell you what to do. I'm a salesman. I always, I look good, but I was doing so good, I was thinking about killing myself. That's how much I didn't surrender my addiction. I surrendered my addiction because I didn't drink or drug. I was done with that. My mom used to call me her best baby, right? Until I turned 2. After that, it was all downhill. I didn't listen. I was always in trouble or whatever. Don't tell me what to do. I always do what I wanted. And thank God I had my dad, because he did help me learn right and wrong. And I've always been kind. I got my kindness from him and wanting to help people and stuff like that. So anyway, when I'm in prison, I was deciding what I wanted to do, if I was going to go back in the tire business or not. And this might sound funny, but John DuPont had killed the person he killed, and he come to Camp Hill. And I was a clerk in the chapel, and I was a clerk in the drug and alcohol program. You usually only get one job, but I talked him into letting me have both, because I wanted to get out of the chapel more than... Anyway, I wanted to get out and help guys in the chapel. And I used to sit with John DuPont, and I was talking to him about this a little bit. I'd say, he goes, well, you're going to start a nonprofit. How are you going to fund it? And I said, well, I'll get 100 business people to each give me $1,000 a year. I said, that'll be our foundation money. He goes, I don't think I know 100 people that'll give me $1,000 a year. I said, what? He goes, and then he explained to me what fundraising was all about. He says, you're going in to ask people for money. And he said, well, how are you going to do that? I said, well, you'll get a tax-deductible donation. He goes, no. Every businessman knows he gets a tax-deductible donation for donations. And he gives away all he can. You don't have to do any kind of... His accountants already have all that all figured out. What you're going in is saying, don't give it to who you're giving it to. Give it to me, because he doesn't have any more money to give away. He gives away all he can every year. You just have to change who he gives it to. And he says, and what you're up against is that most owners have a wife and a family, and in that family, somebody died from cancer, or somebody had this, or some situation happened here. And that's who the wife and them want to go. So the man wants peace in his life, so he supports the foundations that supports his family wantings. He said, so you're going to have to go in there and tell them, don't give it to them, give it to me. He said, so that's a hard thing. He goes, people think it's easy raising money, but it's not. And so I was trying to figure out all that because I have a business background and I didn't want to just go out. And what I really came down to was this. I knew I could come out and be successful in the tire business and make good money. And I could support the foundation myself and have somebody else run it. Or I could come out with the foundation, have no money, and I would stay poor and give up retirement and just totally dedicate myself to that. And because I haven't taken a paycheck in 25 years. I don't get any money for doing this now. I say I don't get any money now. I want to make that clear. The foundation provides me a truck to drive, food to eat, a place to stay.
Just like a church does a pastor.
Yeah. So I mean, but I have $100 in a savings account, and the reason I have 100 is because that's what you have to have in it to keep it from going away. So if I ever get any money, I have a savings account, and I have a personal checking account which I never wrote a check out of because I keep $100 in that to keep that open, and and I'm okay with that. That's the decision I made because I knew I would come out and run a business. I'm the type who works 90-hour weeks. And I'd be working 90-hour week at the tire business and having meetings with somebody running the Beacon, and I wouldn't be directly involved. And I wanted to be directly involved like I was with the guys up in prison, because that's really where I started. I used to walk the yard, and I'd hear guys. There's got to be a guy in there for 5 years, and he get made parole, and he gets out, and 6 months later, I see him walking in the yard again, and they hated me when I come walking up to him because they knew what I was going to do. I said, dude. What you want? I know you don't want to be here. Why are you back? And they'd have all these. Well, the halfway house doesn't really give you any opportunity. The recovery houses didn't really give me any. The PO, they had all these reasons, excuses, and I used to listen to the halfway house system, and I was like, they need to be something different. And what I discovered while I was in prison was what was most effective, especially with guys that are in prison, was you can't tell them what to do. You can't mandate anything to them because they go into that. Every inmate has this thing against cops. The cops are the enemy. They run from them. They don't tell them nothing. Don't trust them. They do that with counselors. They do that with probation officer. Anybody that's an authority. Right. Judge. And so what I started thinking about was that I needed to have a place where guys could come and there's no rules. Because the first thing when I used to interview guys to sit down, the first thing they want to know is the rules. I'd see the guys in the halfway house. What are the rules? Because they'll decide which one they're going to break right away or how to break them. And so when I get a guy and I'm interviewing for the Beacon and he said, what are the rules? I said, there are none. You just see it in their eyes. Like, I can do whatever I want? Absolutely. But I always follow that up with, make sure you're doing what you want. Because that's the key. What makes Lights Beacon different, what I started to work with guys upstate was I wanted to treat them as individuals and have and develop a plan that they make. Because then they can't say, you're making me do this, or they don't feel pressure like somebody else is making me do something. This is what you said you wanted. I can interview a guy for 2 hours, and the first thing he says, I don't want to go back to prison. I said, okay. In that 2 hour period, I see 4 things he's already doing. He's going back to prison. And I pointed out to him. He'd be like, I didn't even recognize it. We have a whole camera system throughout the whole Beacon. It's not for security. It's a teaching tool. When guys get in an argument, you're not allowed to fight here. Although it's not a rule, it's just a given. You're not allowed to fight. So I really haven't ever had any fights, physical fights.
Wow.
I had some arguments. And in those arguments, people don't realize like your body language can be threatening. So, and they don't even know it. Like, so I say to a guy, "Hey, I saw your fight.
Roll tape.
Yeah, and you were aggressive." I said, "You know, technically, if you were in a halfway house or a place, anytime you threaten somebody, you can get kicked out." And they said, "Well, I didn't threaten him." I said, "We got loud and all that." I said, "Well, let's watch the tape." And what he sees is how he got within like 3 inches of his face. He moved into his personal space, which is. I said, "You're making that guy have an option, either fight or flight." And I said, "That's threatening." "Oh, I didn't even recognize I did that." I said, "Well, this is what you need to learn. You need to learn, you know." So we use all that kind of stuff. There's about 30 guys here. 10 guys are doing really well. 10 guys are doing okay, and 10 guys are not going to make it. They just, they're still doing the same. But the life skill part of the beacon is, which is what I used up there in the prison, because in prison there's there's an undertow of negativity that's very formidable, and you got to use prison code to be able to deal with it. To change up states is very difficult, and so I use the examples here. I said to the guys that are doing really well, "Look, there's good examples of what not to do." "Yeah, I can see that." "Okay, good, they're helping you." These guys, "Hey, there's good examples of what to do." They're helping them. The guys in the middle, that's where they still have a little bit, they influence them in a kind of negative way, and they try and influence these guys in a positive way. They're kind of the ones that are different cliques, and so they're the ones I work with the most, the guys in the middle, because there's hope there. They have some degree of honesty, and that's what my only rule here is. You have to be honest. If you can't be honest with yourself, I can't help you. So that's the only rule. And so upstate, I was experiencing that. So everything I'm doing out here, I kind of experienced it upstate. And then one day, my dad kept asking me. He says, we had this building over here that would make a good tire shop, which I used to have when I had the thing. I could have. He said you could probably use that. And I said, well, I think I'm going to do the beacon because I don't want to be just funding it money and managing it from a distance. I want to actually be working with the guy. I feel God's calling me to directly, to a passion, to directly give up all the stuff of being a business owner and just dedicate myself to this. And it's not easy, but it's a passion. So I made that decision that I was going to come out, run the beacon, and really our funding, we get a little bit of funding, probably about $10,000 a year, maybe. The rest comes from guys paying rent.
Wow.
And I'll tell you my thought behind that. I hear guys, I talk to guys all the time. How many times have you been in rehab? Oh, 20, 15, 6, 10, 30 sometimes. And I said, really? I said, I'm like, did you ever pay for any of them? Well, no. I said, oh. I said, well, if you'd had to pay for one of them, would you got something out of it? Hell yeah. I said, oh. I said, if somebody gives you a car, you probably don't take care of it like you do if you're buying it and you're paying for it and you got to maintain it and keep it running good, or you're going to lose your investment. So that's what I do here. The guy's got to come here. They got to get a job. They got to work. They got to pay rent. I teach them how to manage their money, save money. But the key thing about change is that money's key. Work ethic is key, but their emotional ethic, how I always call it the 80%. If you find 80% of what you're looking for, you found 100%. And so when the guys come out, they want to get a girlfriend and all that stuff. I say, you're looking for the perfect girl. You want to get a perfect job. You want to buy a car that never has any problems. I said, no, if you find 80%, I said, because that's what life is. 80%, you're okay with your job. You're okay with your family. You're okay with your wife. You're okay with your car. The 20% is what you got to deal with life. And I said, you only have 6 hours a day to deal with that. 8 hours you sleep if you can. 8 hours hopefully you work, maybe 10 hours. You got to buy groceries and do laundry and take a crap. Then you got 6 hours. That's what you got to manage. I said, so what's been your problem your whole life? You can't manage that 6 hours. You got to use drugs. You got to go in and out of prison. You got to lose everything, build it back up, lose everything, build it back up. 6 hours, you know? And so guys look at that like, yeah, you're right. I said, let's start managing that 6 hours. Develop a routine. What are you going to do? You know, you got your sleep hours, you got your work hours. What are you going to do with the rest of your hours? When are you going to buy groceries? When are you going to go out on dates? When are you going to spend time with family? When are you going to have some solitude for yourself? And that's what you got to develop. Because if you don't develop that, you haven't changed. Just because you're clean and sober doesn't mean you changed. My story is that I was 5 years clean and sober. I shot and killed somebody in an argument. And I never was internally peaceful in them 5 years. Always struggled. Didn't struggle with not using. I was done drinking and drugging. That beat me. Part of my childhood was, or growing up, becoming into a man, was my work ethic gave me a lot of self-esteem. I never missed work. I always worked. I never screwed a customer. I always followed through. I said I was going to do something. I did it, and I did the best I could, and I got a lot of self-esteem from that. Socially, I got my self-esteem from drinking and drugging. And when that got to the point where that was affecting my ability to work and affecting my ability to be social, I had to quit it. And so I quit it. So I took away half of my self-esteem builder and only had to work, which that got a lot better because you can work a lot better. You're not drinking and drugging, and business got, I always had good employees. So, I mean, it wasn't like I did more business. I just didn't have hangovers and I could think clear. But anyway, I didn't do the necessary recovery within myself to get to the core root of why I was not able to have self-esteem socially, and which I needed drinking and drugging to do. You know, I can't dance unless I'm drunk. I can't.
Same.
I can't sing. I don't sing even when I'm drunk, but
Right.
I can't do a lot of things. I don't do a lot of things. I had to learn that. But I had to learn how to deal with my feelings and emotions, how to deal with that 20% that was frustrating me, you know. So I kind of developed that in the prison with guys, and then that's when I made the decision I'm going to come out, run the foundation, dedicate my soul life to the rest of my, I'm going to work with the foundation until I die.
I believe that.
Or to some health reason I can't, right, or something. But I think I can still. I remember there was a guy who used to run the Madison House over here before they sold it to East and West. His name was Larry Guerrero. He was one of my sponsors when I first got clean and sober. He ran that to the day he died from a bed. He had guys that helped him, and the guys were managing for him, but he ran it till he died. And I'm going to do that too. I think that's what God wants me to do. It's a little hard on relationships because I'm married to the Beacon.
Right.
And so, if you got a significant other, they usually don't want you to be married to something else.
Yep.
So that's been a struggle a little bit for me, but I'll work through that. So there's my answer. When I upstate, I knew I didn't want to go back in business and support the foundation that way. I wanted to be the one that was directly involved in running it. So that's why I decided to go with the Beacon instead of getting back in the tire business.
And so you said something there, and I've heard you say it, a bunch of times about, being married to something, and you have way more time in country with the whole recovery thing than I do. But seeing some of these guys that as soon as they're not 100% addicted to drugs and alcohol or whatever, then they're addicted to work. And work becomes everything. And then life is nothing without relationships. So every relationship they have goes to shit. And then they're usually back to drinking and drugging again. I see a lot of guys, man, they come out and go, well, as long as I'm working, I'm staying out of trouble. So like you said, so what do they, it just makes sense. They're avoiding that 6 hours a day. They can't have those 6 hours today. And I see guys get out of jail. I see guys get out of prison. And that freedom, too much of that freedom, the idle mind is idle hands of devil's playground. And that's what, you see, they've got to have this structured time. And if they're not putting it in, I say it all the time, and 100%, I got it from you. We all need Jesus Christ and a few good men. Uh, if they don't have anybody holding them accountable, nobody knows how they're dipping and diving around and like doing their things. But when you're in a situation like you're here at the Beacon, where we're all scumbags and we're all just 100% clear about that we're all scumbags, you're not going to bullshit a bullshitter. And I think that's a really good thing.
I developed the you know that I know that you know that I know. I established that the first time I meet him about lying to me, and I tell him if I ask you something, you can bet there's a 99.9% I already know the answer. I want to see if you're going to lie, because if you're lying, I can't help you.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. And my mother told me the same thing. She goes, you can, no matter what, you tell me the truth, I'll do whatever I can, but I got to know what I'm working with. And I've heard you say that so many times, when you've gone to court, with guys and, the Paul Harvey, they tell you and they get you under there underneath false pretenses. And so many times, guys in recovery, they come to us and they want help. And of course, what's that deviant behavior is they give you half of the story, and they don't tell you the rest of the story. And then you go to bat for somebody else in front of a probation agent or a judge or whatever, and then they hit you with that, and it makes you look like the asshole.
Yeah.
And then and I think one of the things is they're not thinking about anybody but themselves, but they don't realize what that does to your effectiveness and what you're trying to do for a bunch of people.
Well, the judges make adjustments with that, because I've had, like, Judge Kennedy used to. You're making an argument for a guy, or Judge Jabilcock. You're making an argument for a guy with the information he gave you, and then Judge Jabilcock will stop and say, "How about if I add this to it?" And he adds something to it, and he knew me. He says, "Sounds like he Paul Harvey'd you, Bob," because they knew me. And I say, "Yeah." He goes, "What's your argument now?" I said, "I have no argument now." And the guy said, "You Paul Harvey'd Bob, man. His argument doesn't make sense with these facts."
Right.
And then, of course, the guy gets. I mean, I used to watch Judge Kennedy. Sometimes he would tell the guy, "Go, what happened?" He'd come back after he gave. Judge Kennedy would give opportunity. Judge Kennedy studied drug court and all kinds of stuff. He was for helping guys, if he could, if they wanted it. So he would give a guy a break and say, "But if you come back in front of me, I'm gonna give you a 5 to 10." And so the guy would come in, and he would come back. He would come in, and the judge said, "What happened?" And then you see the judge always looking at his computer, and he finds, "You call such date. I told you if you come back in front of me, you get a 5 to 10." So there it is, 5 to 10. There you go. But the guys respected Judge Kennedy for that. He was about what he said he was about, and they couldn't argue with that. Of course, they weren't happy they got their sentence, but Judge Kennedy came down here at one of our festivals in the dunk tank. It's the only place in the country where I could get up on stage and say, "Okay, all you convicted felons, Judge Kennedy put you upstate. He's in the dunk tank right now. You want to throw balls at him." And Judge Kennedy loved it, man. He was heckling with them, and John Tuttle was the state parole board chairman. He was in our dunk tank. So the guys upstate that used to not get their green sheets or get hits and all that stuff, you could throw the ball at him. We had probation officers in there. A lot of support, We'll go back to one of your things you were saying there. Yeah, they think because they're not drinking and drugging, they're doing okay. And I take it to this thing about being a man and a boy. I tell them that clean time doesn't keep you clean. Clean time doesn't change you. And I'm talking about my story because I know that. I lived it. And most people go through, come out of high school and go into college, a lot of heavy partying and stuff like that. When they get out of college, they get married or settle down or get a career, and they dedicate themselves to becoming a man. They do the things they don't want to do to make the job work, to make the marriage work, to have a family, to have a vehicle, a career. Guys in the military, they go in there, every weekend or whenever they get time off, necessarily on a ship, but weekends with a lot of partying, and they're heavy drinkers. They're not alcoholics, they're heavy drinkers. When they get out, most of them stop, get married or get back in their marriage and careers and they move forward and become a man. It's like I say this. A lot of times an addict wants to get credit for doing what he's doing. Like the POs and sometimes the judges and family members and all this, they give these guys attaboys for getting a job and paying their bills and paying child support now and seeing their kids and having a license to drive and have insurance on the car with the registered car. Man, you're doing good. You're doing good. He's not doing good. He's not doing good. He thinks he's doing good because he's doing that. Because he gets some attaboys. I give him no attaboys for that. That's a gimme. You get no credit for doing what a man's supposed to do. A man does what he doesn't want to do every day, every time. And so, look, especially guys coming out of prison, you do the man boy thing, it gets their attention because you call him a boy. And I just let him know what it is. A boy gets out of prison and goes back and starts spending time with his kids and then leaves again and goes back up prison. He goes there and he makes the mother look bad. The kids get hating their mom because the mom's making them do homework, going to school, doing chores, doing what they're supposed to do. And dad stops by and takes him to Hershey Park, and takes him over here, baseball game, this, that, and the other. It's all fun. And dad's a good guy, mom's a bad guy now. And I said, but then you go away. I said, you're doing more damage to your kid going in and out. Come out, make the change, stay out, and then get your kid and go back and don't leave. Whatever that situation is, maybe you only get them every other weekend, whatever it is, but you don't leave. You get jobs and you stay there. You don't quit jobs. You move responsibly. You build yourself up in the career. Here's what I do. I say, you want to be a man? You write a resume. I want you to write a resume of your life to today. All the relationships, how they went, whether you got charges, PFAs, strangulations, screwed him over, whatever. He had 3 women at once. He's cheated. All your job history, where everything you stole, a real in-depth, complete resume of your life, everything you've done. And I said, when you meet a girl, you hand her that resume, and if she still wants to spend time with you after she reads that resume, the only thing she should see is the back of your elbows and the bottom of your feet running away as fast as possible. Because she's probably sicker than you. Just came out of prison, you're in a halfway house or a recovery house or a life skills house. You have nothing. You're just starting to work. You got all kind of bills and stuff you got to catch up on, fines and costs, probation fees, child support to make up, whatever. You got, all kind of stuff. You can't even afford to be going out. And there you are. And the big thing you're bragging about, the guys in the back of the house, she got a car. I got a ride. And then you make her a slave, riding you around. I just tell them, man, I said, you want to go get up there and tell your story, and your story is that I'm working, I'm paying my bills, and you want everybody to give you attaboys. If I filled the room with 80-year-old men, they'd be sitting there going like this. What's he talking about? I did that for 50 years. I didn't get no attaboys for paying the house mortgage every month, keeping the family together, putting my kids through high school, college, and then getting involved in their careers. I didn't get no attaboys for always paying my car payments and having insurance and getting a license and having a license and doing the right thing. And it was hard. Every day I did stuff. I kept in my career. I built myself on the career. I tried to provide retirement. I tried to leave something for my kid. They don't get no attaboys for that. That's what a man does. He takes care of that. He takes care of everything that he's responsible for, and then he has a little bit of time for himself. I said, and that man does that every day. And I know that today. 'Cause every day I get up, I do half the stuff I do in the daytime I don't want to do, but I make myself do it. And that's what keeps me strong. That's what keeps me connected to God, because sometimes what I don't want to do is just worldly stuff. I don't feel like doing laundry, or I don't feel like doing this, doing that. Other stuff is giving a guy guy that just screwed you over, but you give him forgiveness and you still help him. That's what God wants me to do. So it comes down to that. I make myself do it. even if I don't want to do it. And most of the time, almost 100% of the time, when I make myself do what I don't want to do, at the end of it, I feel better. I feel good. I feel accomplished. I feel satisfied. Or even if you help a person who can't love himself and you love him and he still don't love himself, it felt good to be able to give him an example or give him some love. And that comes back to you. I mean, I've had guys years later. I get this letter from a guy, and this guy I tried to help for about 2 years. And he ended up going crazy again, going back to prison. Anyway, I didn't know that, but he left. And I got this letter saying, hey, man, I really appreciate what you did for me all them years ago. I finally get it. Can I come back there? And I wrote him back, sent him an acceptance letter. Said, yeah, sure. You know, I figured he was in prison or coming out again or whatever. And then I got this letter back. Says, oh, well, first I got to do this 15 to 30. And so I wrote him back and I said, well, that doesn't change anything. You do in prison what you were going to do out here. Because the big thing in prison is the guy said, you got to wait till you get out before you can do anything. And my whole story is I did stuff in state prison you can't do. I was doing stuff that you're not allowed to do. I'm not talking about stuff, bad stuff.
Home plans.
Well, I was writing home plans for inmates and getting accepted to Lights Beacon while I was an inmate in there. And I met the Department of Corrections head and my superintendent of the prison, had a nice little meeting with them. And they said, hey, you can't do that. I said, okay. I said, I know you're used to talking to guys telling you what they're going to do when they get out. You're not used to meeting somebody who's doing what they're going to do when they're in here, while they're in here. I was running groups inside state prison by myself in a locked room with 30 other inmates. That can't happen. It has to be a CO in there. It has to be a staff member. It has to be a counselor. Every Sunday I ran a group in there. The unit manager was cool. The unit manager, I used to come, guys would get write-ups. And I know I saved a lot of guys from getting class 1 write-ups because they go in there with the authority there, so they can't talk or they get aggressive or they just say F it and they get their class 1. I go in there and present a few facts. I knew the COs, I knew this, I knew everybody, and I said, you know, the guy's a little aggressive with his write-ups. You know, he exaggerates a little bit. You know, you have to admit that. And get the guy a class 2, and it wouldn't affect his parole, and he wouldn't have to go to the hole. And I did that a lot. But every once in a while, I'd approach the door. My unit manager would be there. He'd go like this. I looked at the guy and said, you're on your own on this one. And he would go in and get a class run and get to the hole because it was something they weren't going to play with.
You do what you can when you can.
Yeah. And I used to get write-ups that never stuck. You're not allowed to give anything to anybody in prison. If they have a book and you give it to somebody, they're not allowed to have it. You got to keep your own stuff. And they used to find books all over my prison. I just had books. They'd raid that 2 blocks away from ours, and I'd get a couple write-ups because they found my books. And the unit manager was always going down and getting my stuff back. I had a word processor you weren't allowed to have. That's why I did a lot of my writings on. They let me, and that got confiscated many times, and the unit manager had to get out and get it. I met a counselor in there, Mr. Redinger. By far was the one that helped me the most. And I used to go in there. When I first met him, I'd go in his office and I'd be telling him, man, out here in the block, this is going on, that's going on, this is bullshit, all this crazy stuff. And I get done, he'd look up and say, so what? I look up and say, so what? Do you hear what I just said? He goes, yeah, get out. When you come back here and talk about yourself, I'll listen to you. But right now you ain't even talking about yourself. You can't do nothing about that. Get out. And he did that for about 10, 15 times, man. I got so pissed off. One time I walked in there and I said, if you say, so what, one more time, then that's it. And he looks up at me and said, so what? I was like, he said we're going. But he ran a group called 12-Step Focus, and it was the only group in the state of Pennsylvania you had to interview to get in. Other inmates interviewed you to get in. And it was a self-run 12-step. Now, he was in the room, and he would, his chair would make a certain noise. You know he was like going to stop us from doing what we're doing. Like, okay, this is where we're going with this, you know. But he was always listening. But we had different people that ran. I was in that group for 6 years. And we tore a person down and built him back up. And it took them 3 years to tear me down. And the rest of the time was to build back up. But that's where I learned that you're full of shit. You know, let them run a story and you're full of shit.
Let me let you finish. Go ahead. Right?
And
let me hear it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me hear the whole story. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're full of shit.
Yeah. Yeah, because we do that in that group. That group trained me a lot with working with others, and you know. So, Mr. Redinger, even after I got out of prison, I had the best recommendation for a parolee in the state of Pennsylvania. It said this is the best candidate for state parole Pennsylvania's ever had. I got a year and a half hit. Now I knew I was going to get a year and a half hit or a year hit. Back then in the '90s, you did a violent crime, you did 85% of your time. Plus the victims, it was the only debt I could pay, and I wanted to pay it. I don't care if I did all 10 years. I had a 5 to 10, and for voluntary manslaughter, and I was okay. I mean, it wasn't easy. When I hit the 5-year mark, I was like, I don't know if I can do any more of this. And I went and got with some lifers, who've been in there for 25, 30, 40 years, and say, hey, when you hit the 5-year mark, what was that like? He said, oh, that's rough. He said, but you got to make the change, and it's a really simple routine in prison, but a day turns into a week turns into a month, and a month turns into a year. It's just, God, time just slows down, man, and it's just crazy. But I was able to stay in that drug and alcohol program. I was a clerk for the drug and alcohol program, and I was able to stay in that 12-step focus group. These guys are in there about a year, 6 months to a year, and of course I ran it for about 4 years, and that helped me tremendously. And but when the guys come out, I hit them with the man boy thing. The boy don't like what he has to do, so he don't do it. And if we sit down and talk about their life up to this point, that's the way it was. I don't want to do it. I don't do it. I don't like it. I don't do it. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's work, girlfriend, wife, kids, any responsibility. And the man don't like what he has to do, but he does it anyway. And if you start doing, that's what my dad taught me. I saw my dad. It wasn't easy for my dad to. Not that he had a bad marriage or anything, but it wasn't easy for him to stay in the marriage. It wasn't easy for him to keep raising kids, keep running the business and providing the living, to take care of the house and all the cars and deal with us kids, all the shit we were bringing. But those 80-year-old men would be sitting there going, "What's the big deal? What kind of? Who cares what you're? That's a gimme. That's a gimme." And you do that for your whole life.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Be a man for 50 years, 60 years.
That's the difference. I mean, I watched my old man. He was he worked in a factory. He was a boilerman for 43 years in the same factory, and a lot of times he worked 2 jobs. He didn't. I don't think he ever wanted to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's other things he wanted to do, and what happens with a lot of jobs is. People get into something and they're making good money. They don't want to do that job anymore, but what they want to do, they can't go make the same amount of money, so they get trapped into it. But that's me. My mom was she had an 8th grade education. She was a waitress, and then the chief of police lied, said she had a high school diploma. She became a police dispatcher, but they never called in sick. They weren't late. Like, that wasn't, if we got upset, I don't feel good. My mother said, go to school, you'll feel better. That's all ever. Nobody cared. Nobody entertained how you felt. And I think that's the big problem today. With how many guys would you guess have come through the Beacon?
I could get you an exact number because we've used QuickBooks since the very beginning. Probably 100 a year.
Okay, wow.
Some guys stay for a day. Some guys stay for a couple of weeks. I've had guys get their associate's degree over at Hack. Took them 2 years to get that, and then they go to Penn State another 2 years and get their bachelor's. So I've had guys stay here 4 years. That's rare, but most guys stay a year, 6 months, a year and a half, 2 years sometimes. 1 out of 100 makes it.
Right. Yeah, it's not.
So 25 years. I've been doing about 25 years. I started in 1995, and I started running it in jail in '97, and we had our first resident in 1999 over here, and I didn't get out of prison until 2002. So I was writing home plans from '99 to 2002, and I had to stay up in Harrisburg. So when I got out in Harrisburg, I got a job at a tire company. Of course, I knew Jack Gallagher, and I ended up asking if I could live at the back of his warehouse. Had a little thing. I made a little kitchen in there, and a bedroom, and a little office. And Dad used to run guys up from the Beacon up to my office for the interview and all kinds of stuff. And then once I was off parole, I could go back to York County, and I came down in 2003. Been here ever since.
I know we talk all the time about the drugs and the alcohol, but I just really see those as just symptoms. What do you think are the big things that drive men to doing what they shouldn't do? I've seen most guys deal with rage, anger. A lot of guys from being molested when they were young, having a problem, with mom or dad or both when they were real young, and that's what I see in the rooms like as a constant driver. What do you think?
Well, everybody focuses on the anger, and anger is a secondary emotion. Anger is not the primary emotion. If you're angry, it's because you either have some kind of fear, anxiety, or something is happening. Like you get in a car wreck. When you get out of the car and you want to get all pissed off at the guy, it's not because your anger is based on your fear of your car, or is my insurance going to cover it? Is it my fault? His fault? Whatever. Or your girlfriend. I've seen guys, and myself. I've seen guys. Okay, you lose your anger, you punch a hole in the wall, and you yell stuff at a woman that you would yell at the meanest dude in the streets, and then 5 minutes later you want to come back and say you're sorry. And what was that based on? Well, you felt threatened. She either threatened you in some way, had some kind of fear, a financial fear, a emotional fear, something. So to get, like today, I don't let it's okay. I tell guys, you need to get angry. Anger is an emotion that is necessary. God gave it to you for a reason. It's Jesus flipped the tables in the church and told them, hey, take a hike. But how you use your anger is what it makes the difference. And how you control how you use your anger is you got to deal with the underlying things. Toxic shame is probably the biggest driver of most men. If you've been molested as a kid, you're a bedwetter, liar, a cheater, a stealer, a manipulator, conner, it's usually a toxic shame. Or an ego's out of control. Narcissism sometimes, but a narcissist is not hard to spot. But it does cause problems because they make the other person the problem instead of themselves. Anger is a way to deflect how you really feel and not deal with it. Because you just use anger to avoid everything. And so when you stop doing that and you get to behind the anger, what's going on. Like I used to think I was very, very courageous and had a lot of courage because I would fight. I thought fighting was something that you did for, you show respect and you make people respect you. Well, Mr. Redinger sat down with me one time and said, every time you got in a fight, you didn't fight out of courage, you fought out of fear. I said, you're absolutely crazy. No way. And of course, he had a way of making me think, and I thought it through, and I was like, you know what? Yeah. And he goes, then how does a fight happen? It takes two. You can't fight with yourself. You have to participate in it. And I was like, yeah, every fight, I played a part in it. And it was out of fear that I fought, not out of courage. And so that's why I made a commitment to myself never to fight again. I don't care what happens. You don't have to fight. And I don't. I tell guys that the first time I do an interview, I'm never going to get another fight. I say I haven't hurt anybody since 1993. And I'm never going to get in a fight. And a lot of people say, well, that's a weakness, man. They're going to try and... I said, no. I follow that up with, but you're never going to walk on me. You're never going to walk on me. But they know that. See, if a guy has to ask you where your source of power is coming from, then you're not about it. Because I don't preach to the guy. You know, I can't bring up God to them guys. They have such a resentment or a misunderstanding or blaming, all kind of stuff. I don't even bring God up to them. I wait till they ask me, well, what's your source of strength? Because I always say you can't do it by yourself. You got to do all the work, but you can't do it by yourself. And they'll find, well, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. Oh, you go to church? I said, no, I don't go to church. You don't go to church? I said, no, Jesus didn't say I had to go to church. I said, church serves a purpose, and it's a good one. I said, I have gone to church, and I said, I still go to meetings, AA meetings. AA saved my life back in 1989. Helped me get clean and sober. It provided a thing for me. There's like 23 million people in this country in long-term recovery. AA and NA might have 4 million members. But I got to give AA and NA credit that out of the 23 million, about 95% came through AA and NA. The question is, why didn't they stay? Because they couldn't handle what was there. And that's okay. You know, a lot of relapse, a lot of relationship problems, a lot of nonsense. 80% of people are coming and going. 20% stay, and out of the 20% that stay, half are healthy. So when you want to get a sponsor, you can eliminate 90% of the people and get a 10. But I had guys come back and say, well, I got a guy, he's just like me. And I said, that's not going to work. I said, what? Or I want to get back to where I was. I said, why would you ever want to do that? I said, you need to get somewhere you've never been, and you got to pick somebody that's already there, not just like you, you know. So, but there's a reason why there's people go on to like church, or they go on to mentors, they go on to some solid friendships or something. You know, they didn't. AA and NA gave them the foundation. The 12 steps is right from the Bible. It's good 12 principles. They're solid, and if you work it, they work. But some people can't handle you know, some people can't, like what I do for a living. If you can't handle what drugs and alcohol do to people, you can't do this job.
Right.
Because, you know, they lie, they cheat, they'll screw you over, and they don't want to. Guys here have really good relationship with them, and they truly do. We have a bond, but yet they still can, you know, say one thing and do another. You know. Right. And you can't hold that against them, because that's what addiction does. But addiction's not an excuse. I tell guys, just because you're an alcoholic drug addict doesn't make you any different than anybody else. Every human being's got the same stressors. They got the same thing they got to go through to try and survive and do well and provide and be fit in and have self-esteem and all. Alcohol and drugs just, you know, actually it might make it a little harder, but not really. Depression and anxiety and fear, developing the mental health stuff. I said, you know, the military guys get the PTSD. You got to address it, but it doesn't make their life any harder or easier than anybody else's. Everybody's got to struggle. Life is difficult, and so. I just try and establish with the guys that it's not about getting attaboys and bragging about what you're doing. If you have to tell somebody, hey, I'm holding a job now, and I'm paying bills, I'm doing that, you're not doing it for the right reason. They should not. They don't know what my strength comes from unless they ask, but they know I have it. Mm-hmm. Because they see me do it. They see me handle situations where normally I would want to knock somebody's teeth to the back of their head, but I don't. I actually give them grace and I give them understanding. And they see that, and they say, I don't know how you do that. I said, well, it's not easy, but I do it anyway. And then they go, oh, because you're a man. I said, yeah, because I stopped being a boy. Because that boy would have fought. We'd have gotten a fight. I said, I would have been back in prison. I couldn't have run this place. I'd have... With my record, any violence I would do, I'd be going back upstate for whatever, too long. So, if every time it came to a situation and I get in a fight, what, you know, what kind of effectiveness would that be? You know, so I tell this to the guys. They think that they're coming here for me to help them, and I tell them, God, everybody's coming through here. God sent here to help me.
Amen.
Because it's great when a guy sits down and he has issues that I've already worked through, and I don't really have to work on that hard anymore, and I can just give them direction and guidance. Hey, this is what I did. This is what you can do. That's fine. A guy sits down and he's got some issues that I'm still trying to work on, and I have a lot of edge work on. You know, like I'm pretty much got them on the backside, but they have still a little power. I'm like, dang, now I got to do this with the guy. You know, here's what we need to do. You know, and then the guy sits down and he pings me with my core things. The same thing every man's got, like you're talking about. You know, they want to be in a relationship, they want to have a good woman, a good wife. They want to do things with it, but you know, you gotta deal with whatever's happening. That 20% can be really rough sometimes, especially if your partner's got mental health or if whatever, you know, just the dealing with other people and yourself. You know, you gotta accept yourself as you are. Like for me, if something rises up in me that's rising anger, I express the anger in an appropriate way. I don't like that. I appreciate if you don't do that. You know, this, that, and the other. But if it gets to the point where something's causing me to go beyond that, and I have to say, no, I can't deal with that right now. I have to come back later. And it's not about you. It's about me. Because if I stay in it, I have the potential of doing something inappropriate. And I don't want to do things inappropriate anymore. And so every relationship does that. Work does it. Personal relationships, friendships. A Walmart. I go into a Walmart and there's more than 20 people in the line, I'd leave. Because what I'll do is go over and get in the line, and by the time I get up to cash register, I'll have everybody in the line complaining that this is crazy. Why is there's 50 cash registers there and they only got 2 open? And I've already gone to the point where I've called the manager over. This lady would be walking by at work, and I say, hey, could you get the store manager? She goes, oh, we have an associate over. I said, no, I need the store manager. She goes, is it that serious? I said, it is. So she goes and gets the store manager. He comes down and says, yes, sir, can I help you? I said, something very serious. I said, it is. Can you stand here for a minute? And wait. And then he'll say, well, sir, I got a lot of things to do. I said, look, can you stand here a minute? And then finally he'll say, sir, I'm going to have to go. He says, you need to tell me what's going on. I said, this is what's going on. You have 2 cash registers open. You're forcing me to, my time's just as important as your time. I'm standing here. You're forcing me to go through this. This is before they had the self-checkouts, which is another story. I don't show them my receipts. Sir, can I see your receipt? No. I said, I work for me. I said, if you did the work, you'd already know. I said, no. But anyway, so he would be there, and I said, this is something that's you could solve. You could have more cash registers open. And then he kind of wants to explain to me. I said, but what's important is that your time's valuable, right? Yeah, my time's valuable. Every person here's time's valuable. And by the time I'm done that, everybody's getting around, yeah. And then just to make a point. So I've done that before, and I did it in the right way. I mean, I didn't get nasty, you know, just very poignant. But I know that when I walk into a thing, I have to know myself. In any situation I can.
What am I willing to accept?
You know, well, and not even accept, but it's not okay to be inappropriate. No. It's not okay to do that. It's what Jesus did, you know. I've already taken people to Walmart and I say, oh, I got to go back to the car. I'm not gonna go in. Go ahead, you go in. And wait for them, and they come out and bring their stuff. And they go, why do you go in? I said, I'm not gonna deal with the line. I've had the day was a long day. You don't realize at the Beacon here, I might have a whole day planned what I want to do, and I don't get to none of that. And it's one thing after another. And you know, my biggest goal is not to go like this. Oh, man, what do you need? Or I have to treat. They don't know that I had 15 people before them bringing me situations, but that's what I do, and that's what my help is. And so, if the day gets long and all that, I'll grab Rusty and go for a walk.
Yep.
I take some days off sometimes. I haven't done that in a couple of years, but I used to be able to when I had Amy working here full time and other stuff. But I deliver, and that's something that I do through prayer with God, in that to give me the strength to treat each one as the first one.
Amen.
and do that all day long. And at the end of some days, man, I sit down and I just go like, you know, God, if you'd have brought one more, and you know what happens when I say that? Yep. Hey Bob, do you have any bus passes at 30? And this is 11 o'clock at night. Yeah. When did you think you knew you needed them? Well, I knew yesterday. I said, okay. I said, so you came at 11 o'clock tonight? I said, you need it for tomorrow morning, right? I said, well, I appreciate you not coming. I appreciate you coming tonight and not tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock when you're getting ready to try and go, you know? And I just try to make it a light thing. But it's like, one more thing. But it's not on them. This is God's
Right.
passion and purpose for me. And I got to take the burden with it and do it. You know, how you behave matters. How you deal with frustration, anger, your fears, your anxieties, it matters. I got this big thing. Complaining is a complete waste of time and has no value. And I am not willing to invest in that because it has no value. It's just a complete waste of time. So I don't complain. And no whining. I don't know if you see.
Yeah, I've seen it all over. Yeah.
No whining signs. It's right there.
Oh, there it
I
is.
got one in every room. Almost. No whining.
Yep.
You know? But to be honest, you know, it's almost like a person cannot not do that. I guess where I do that today is, and it's not really complaining or whining, but it's my talk to God. It's like, whew, God, man, some days are rough, you know. And he's just a cool boss. You know, he'd be like, yeah, well, deal with it.
Yep.
And I go back to my one counselor. I think God says that to me. So what?
So what?
Just do it.
It's
You're all in.
It's just been awesome to get a chance to sit here and chat with you and share with a bunch of people on the Forge and my new YouTube channel, Low Key Lifestyle or Low Key Living. Be on behalf of me, all the guys that you've helped, especially the guys that I sponsor, because you've made my job a hell of a lot easier. I just appreciate it, and I want you to know that I love you, brother.
Yeah, I love you too.
Thanks, man.